In this video, I want to talk about Alexander Dugin and some of the statements that he made on Twitter and how it relates to what's going on in Ukraine, how it's relating to what's going on in Iran, how it's relating to what he sees as the breaking apart of the Maga movement in the United States. So since you don't necessarily know a lot about Alexander Dugin, let me give you some of the background about this guy. He's known as Putin's brain. He's the ideological force that Putin listens to about how the world should be, about how world order should be. He's written multiple books, including things like A Theory of a Multipolar World. You hear the Russians talk about how they want a multipolar world rather than one dominated by the US and Europe and that sort of thing. And he really is interested in the idea of various regions controlled by various different factors, like Russia controlling their sphere of influence and the United States controlling their sphere of influence, rather than globalization, which is to him the big boogeyman. Now, I'm not a globalist myself. I'm a nationalist, not in the term, not in the way that Trump uses the word, but in the sense that, I'm proud to be an American. I'm happy to be an American. I think America's interests should come first, but not in the MAGA way where it comes only. That's the thing. Like, our interests are actually entwined with Europe, and we have to be aware of how it's entwined. Otherwise, we get into a scenario like World War I and World War II. So he's anti-globalist, anti-uni-government, or whatever, however he describes it. But let's talk about some of these tweets. So before I talk about the tweets, this is his background. He's a doctor of sociology and political sciences, PhD of philosophy. He's a founder of the Russian Geopolitical School and Eurasian Movement. And basically, the theory is Russia kind of needs to take over everything as far as it can. That's a very shorthand explanation. But like, seriously, he's one of the reasons why Putin is doing what he's doing. So he put this tweet out, and I was like, okay, I think I know what that means, but let me make sure. And so I'm using some AI to help me understand because the AI reads everything, including his work. So, okay, globalists and deep state. Okay, whenever you hear deep state, MAGA conservatives talk about, MAGA Republicans, they're not conservative, they're populist more than they are conservative, talk about the deep state, right? Conservatives like me don't actually talk about that. There's a split within the Republican Party. Old school conservatives like me, Reagan conservatives, are very different. Globalists and deep state want to unleash nuclear World War III to destroy humanity and accelerate singularity. If you don't know what the singularity is, don't worry, I'll talk about that in just a moment. People of the U.S. reacted electing Trump with an alternative agenda. Trump started right now nuclear World War III. This is just a couple of days ago. This was yesterday he put this out, and he was talking about the bombing of Iran, right? To destroy humanity and accelerate singularity. If that was gibberish, I'll explain it in just a moment. Then he put this one out as well. What we have now in USA is everything, but not high, not first turning. It is the end phase of crisis, the fourth turning. If Strauss-Howe are correct, and now remember, he's an academic, so he's referring to just these other academics talking about their theories, something should happen in USA, and soon enough. MAGA is betrayed and profaned. Can it resurrect? Okay, let's decode what's being said here, because this is hard to understand if you don't understand the background. Okay, so I went to ChatGPT 4.0, explain this quote of Dugin's, and we're going to explain it. We have now in the USA everything, but not high, not first turning. It's the end phase of crisis. If Strauss-Howe are correct. Okay, so Alexander Dugin, let me move this screen over a little bit so you can see it. Sorry about that. Alexander, here we are. Is that better? Okay. Alexander Dugin is referencing Strauss-Howe generational theory, which divides history into four recurring turnings: high, awakening, unraveling, and crisis, each lasting roughly 20 years. So according to his theory of history, it's kind of like a Marxian view of history, in the sense that, and remember, he comes from the Soviet Union. His PhD training was while he was Soviet, right? Or just as Russia was breaking up, it's like, just based on his age, he was trained under the former Soviet Union. It has kind of a Marxist flavor to it, where this higher first turning is a period of post-crisis rebuilding marked by civic order and institutional strength. And when I say it's Marxist, in the sense that this has to happen historically, and then this will happen historically, and then that'll happen historically. Okay, so the first turning is a period of post-crisis rebuilding. and just like post-World War II America, where they're rebuilding that strength. The fourth turning is a crisis period characterized by major upheaval, war, transformation, after which a new world order begins. And so that's what he's after. Okay. So we said what he have in the United States is everything, but not a high, not a first turning. So it's not going to be like the U.S. is going to be powerful again. It's the end phase, the crisis of the fourth turning, which means that there's this destruction coming. That's what he's saying here. Major upheaval, war, transformation, after which a new world order begins. And what's that new world order? It is the new world order of regional hegemony, bipolar world or multipolar world where the U.S. is not dominant anymore. That's what he's suggesting. Dugan asserts the U.S. is not in a period of renewal, not high, but instead in a deep crisis phase. He suggests that if the theory holds, a major transformative event is imminent in the U.S. Maga, or Make America Great Again, originally a populist, nationalist, revivalist movement, that's what I've been telling you all along, is described as betrayed and profaned. That is, that he's going back to the old system, the way that people like me used to think about this, and that's a bad thing. His closing question, can it resurrect, implies uncertainty about whether any new unifying force, perhaps post-crisis ideology, can emerge from the present chaos. This is consistent with Dugan's broader philosophical perspective that sees the West in terminal decline as history is cyclical and civilizational in nature. So the West is in decline. It can't actually get any better, and it's going to just destroy itself, and Russia will emerge as one of the victorious multipolar poles within the New World Order. Okay, now there's another statement here. What is Alexander saying here? Globalist and deep state wanted to unleash nuclear World War III to destroy humanity and accelerate the singularity. People of the U.S. reacted by electing Trump, and Trump started right. And now nuclear World War III to destroy humanity and accelerate the singularity. We'll talk about the singularity just a little bit below. Alexander Dugin appears to be using a paradox or irony to critique both globalist elites and Trump at the same time. Okay, globalist and deep state allegedly want to trigger nuclear World War III. Why they would want that, I have no idea. Like, it's going to affect them too, but they may be more protected because they have money and resources and that sort of thing. So globalists and deep state are the enemies. Now, again, I'm not a globalist, but I don't see it the same way as what he's talking about. And the deep state is this, like, this infestation in Washington that wants to just keep the thing the way it is. They want to hang on to the status quo where we're beholden to the globalist system or that sort of thing. And it's a really interesting conspiracy theory that MAGA people have tended to latch onto. I don't see it this way. I mean, if you're talking about deep state, that there's entrenched bureaucracy, sure. But if you're talking about it on a conspiracy theory scale, no. Okay, they want to trigger nuclear World War III to destroy humanity, to bring about technological singularity. Okay, what's that? It's a concept in which AI surpasses human intelligence, often tied to transhumanist or apocalyptic scenarios. I'm not sure how World War III would actually trigger that, but according to theory, that would happen. Now, if you want to actually get to that sooner, where AI grows even further, just keep doing what you're doing with AI, because we're moving headlong that direction. My students in class yesterday were doing a presentation about AI, and like some things that we thought were going to be here in 10 years, like we're going to be to in 10 years, we're actually to a year later. So we're moving headlong the right direction with AI as far as technological growth and prowess. Although a singularity, who knows if that'll be good or bad. Okay, American people elected Trump as a form of rebellion against that agenda, seeing him as a disruptive force. I think that's actually a fair comment. But then Trump himself ends up doing exactly what the globalist intended, starting World War III and advancing destructive singularity, implying either Trump is now fulfilling the same apocalyptic agenda, or there's no escaping the self-destructive trajectory of Western civilization, regardless of who is in power. So the idea that people elected Trump as a rebellion, I think that's very fair, but that Trump is doing exactly what the globalists intend. No, Trump is doing what's in America's interest, in the sense that Iran can't have the bomb, right? and Republicans are reacting. And I'll show you how the Democrats and Republicans, and even we'll talk about how MAGA is reacting to Trump doing what he's doing, because he was supposed to be, remember, I'm all about peace. He's isolationist. He just wants peace, that sort of thing. Okay, this fits with Dugan's philosophy of civilizational struggle, where he sees the West as in terminal decline and chaos, and events like this are symptoms of that decay. So that's why he tweeted this and this. Okay, so let's go out and look at this. Now, some of the most MAGA-y types are folks like Scott Ritter and others. Like here we see this comment that the pro-Putin wing of the MAGA movement is in disarray over Trump's decision to join the Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, let's first talk about why the pro-Putin wing of MAGA. Like that language is really interesting. Well, if you are in MAGA and isolationist and you're like what the agenda that Dugan is talking about, why wouldn't you be pro-Putin? After all, you're looking forward to a world that's bipolar, where Russia kind of deals with their region and you are left alone and they leave you alone in your region and that sort of thing. So that makes sense of why there's that push within MAGA. Okay, here's Scott Ritter, who's one of the terrible mouths of this pro-isolationist wing of MAGA. Scott Ritter, Doug McGregor, folks like that, the judge on Redacted, those kind of voices are out there. MAGA is officially dead as a movement, Scott Ritter says. It's really not, but it's different than what you think. And it's really different, and it's somewhat depressing and somewhat really optimistic at the same time. Just stay with me to the end. You'll see what I'm talking about. When a president wears a MAGA hat while conspiring to take America to war after promising that as the leader of MAGA, he would pursue peace, MAGA stands for nothing. So Scott Ritter's very disappointed by this strike in Iran. Most Republicans are not. Now, weirdly, most Democrats are, which I'll show you this in a moment as well. If you're MAGA, then you must disassociate yourself from this president and everyone who stands with him. They are not America, or they are not MAGA. They are Israel first. So interesting that that's his perspective. But there's a split between those who are MAGA voices and those that are just rank and file people that supported Trump. Okay. Here's Dugan again. Trump is hijacked to incite nuclear Armageddon by reneging on his earlier pledge to start no new wars. Trump has betrayed his own MAGA base. China should be on alert. It's the next target of war. Now, this is really interesting because Dugan's actually on point on this. He's reneging on his pledge to start no new wars. Okay, that's kind of true, kind of not, because Israel started it. He joined in to defuse this ticking time bomb that is Iran getting a nuclear weapon. Betrayed his own MAGA base. Well, some of them do feel betrayed, but a lot of them don't, and I'll talk about that in a moment. China should be on alert. It's the next target of war. That's right. This was a huge message to China that, see, I did this. I was talking with Greg Terry in a live stream when it was going down, when this actually just after this broke, and I said, well, Putin's nervous, but she just peed his pants. Like she is the recipient of this going, okay, they did that. They were willing to do that. What will they be willing to do to defend Taiwan? Okay, so let's look at this. Let's listen to this. This is some commentary on Sky News.
And within the MAGA movement as well, there are some more hardline isolationists who have criticized even just these limited, targeted strikes against Iran's 3 nuclear sites. How divided is the MAGA movement now over the conflict with Iran?
Well, frankly, there's always a difference between the pundit class or the political class and average voters. And I would be surprised if many day-to-day Trump voters were anything but supportive of that.
Now, he's right. That's exactly what has happened here. And I'll show you in just a moment what I mean by that. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a congresswoman from Georgia. She has one of the most Republican districts in the entire country. And okay, so she was criticizing Trump about Iran strikes, but her voters stand by Trump. There's a split, right? Because she's talking MAGA, 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 and they just want to back Trump. Now that's good and bad simultaneously. I'll explain that in a moment. Green called the attack wasteful, yet constituents cite faith and fear to justify the U.S. president's show of force. Okay, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Georgia Congresswoman, MAGA firebrand. Now, Greene gave us the Maga, like I have the MUGA hat, right? by being so anti-Ukraine that she was going to coin that. Okay, her constituents are not. In the past week, Israel and Iran traded strikes until U.S. attempted to intervene. I've watched our country go to war in foreign lands for foreign causes on behalf of foreign interests for as long as I can remember, Greene wrote on Twitter. America is $37 trillion in debt, and all these foreign wars have cost America trillions and trillions of dollars that have never benefited any American. Okay, but it does. It benefits Americans significantly if Iran doesn't have a nuclear bomb, because that changes everything, and that can draw us into a World War III fairly easily. American troops have been killed and forever torn apart physically and mentally for regime change, foreign wars, and for military-industrial base profits. I'm sick of it. And she says, it feels like a complete bait and switch to please the neocons, warmongers, industrial military complex contracts, neocon TV personalities that MAGA hates, who are never Trumpers, she said in another post. Okay, I would probably fit into that kind of class where I don't call myself a neocon. I call myself a Reagan conservative. I'm just a conservative that's always been a conservative, and I haven't shifted over into the populist side with Marjorie Taylor Greene and others like that. I would say, what would Reagan do? Right? Okay, this should have happened 15 years ago. Now, these are the voices of actual constituents, actual rank and file kind of people who just support the president on the Republican side. This should have happened 15 years ago. They can't have a nuclear bomb. They can't. I wish Trump didn't have to do it. I don't think that they can be trusted, talking about the Iranians. I feel like ultimately it's the right thing to do, but I'm not going to lie. It was very scary, and I'm just not 100% sure. I think it was the right decision. So the base is kind of staying with Trump on this because Trump said it. It's really, really weird. And that makes me somewhat depressed, and it simultaneously gives me some hope because she's ideologically MAGA. I don't know that even Trump is ideologically as purely MAGA as Greene is. Like Greene and Bannon and others are just this isolationist kind of crowd. But if Trump says something, there's a lot of his base that's going to go with him, even if it contradicts what he said before. And that's a weird tribalism, but okay, that's where we are. Speaking of tribalism, here's a CNN article about the majority of Americans disapprove of Trump's Iranian airstrikes, according to a CNN poll. Now, what's really interesting about this is, and I'm going to try to do something a little bit differently here. I just got this little device here, this pad to write on. And I'm trying to show you something on here. So here is the total. Okay, look how I'm not very good at this, am I? Okay, here's the total. And we have how many approve? Well, only 44% of adults approve. How many of those Democrats approve? Only 12% approve of Trump's airstrikes. Now, if you're conflicted because you support Ukraine, there's a reason that you're conflicted and you support Ukraine, because on the left, ideologically, you probably don't really like the idea of the airstrikes there in Iran, unless you understand that this is really degrading Russia at the same time. And that, in that case, you might be coming to it. But 82% of Republicans approve. Now, this here is really interesting. This connected to that. Look at the numbers. The total numbers, they're almost exactly opposite. 12 and 82. Well, I'm not exactly opposite, but they're very heavily opposite. It's doesn't lead to 100%. But what's happening here is that they're pretty much mirror images of each other. Now, it could be tribalism or it could be worldview or whatever, but there's a big split in the way that they think. Now, of this, 73% of MAGA, well, I'm not very good at writing here, but I'm using this little pen on this pad. 73% of MAGA actually went along with this and supports it. And so what's fascinating about that is just how much has gone along. Will it make you, will this military action make Iran a threat to the United States? 58% say yes, 85% of Dems, but only 30% of Republicans think so. And so that's a really interesting split. But the point of this is MAGA, 73% went along. That's 82% of Republicans. That means the hawks like me are over in this camp and think that that, yeah, this was a good idea. And again, it was a good idea because it's degrading Russia as much as because it's a good idea to take away the bomb from Iran. By the way, my name is Darren Gerdes. If you don't know me, if you are interested in analysis of what's going on in the world, particularly in Iran, in Russia and Ukraine, and now a little bit in Iran and Israel, because we got to keep our eyes on that too, please consider subscribing. I'll leave you with this last little bit. This was Trump just today. Putin called me and asked me if he could help with Iran. Listen to what was said.
I'd like to see a deal with Russia. As you know, Vladimir called me up. He said, "Can I help you with Iran?" I said, "No, I don't need help with Iran. I need help with you."
Whoa.
And I hope we're going to be getting a deal done with Russia.
If you didn't hear that, he said, "I don't need help with Iran. I need help with you." Okay, maybe something will come of that. I haven't seen Trump actually zag. I've only seen him zig so far toward Russia. But now here's my final point. If Trump were to say tomorrow, and I don't see he's calculated to do this, but if he said tomorrow, Vladimir Putin, I gave him every chance and he's not doing this. He doesn't want peace. I'm going to support Ukraine. 73% of MAGA supported Iran. I think there's a big chunk of MAGA that would support Trump just because he's Trump and go with that. And that could push things forward. I don't know that he's calculated to do that. And that makes me depressed because some are just not thinking and they just want to do whatever Trump wants to do. But it also gives me hope and optimism that maybe it could happen and they could go that direction. We didn't see Iran coming, and maybe something will come with Ukraine. Okay, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time. Tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.